Just enough to give me a little heart murmur.
I took yesterday and today off.
Good
so
for you.
Oh, good for you.
Today, but
Well, it
It's
was
our
a
25th
well-deserved.
anniversary, and I'm like, you know what?
I was
After
like,
the legislative
well-deserved break
session,
after
we're
the session, I'm sure.
not going to work these 2 days.
Good
so
for you.
Wow, good for you. Yeah.
hope you did something fun.
we just went down to Lehigh and went out to dinner and just kind of chilled.
Did you have a good time?
We did.
Been good.
I was away from the kids and away from work, so it was a win.
Hey, we have a special guest.
Hey, stranger.
Welcome. All right, we'll call to order our Planning Commission meeting for Royce City for March 11th of 2025. We'll get started with the pledge led by Commissioner Bills.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict that they need to declare?
No.
Okay, no conflicts. We don't have the minutes that are on the agenda, so we'll skip that and we'll pick those up the next time. So we'll move right on to agenda item number 3, which is a public hearing for considering amending Title 10 zoning ordinance, amending Chapter 13 mixed use, changing building heights from an overall height to a number of stories allowed within the downtown zones for all building types. So I guess we're gonna have a presentation with some sticks. We can't go wrong with that, Steve, so.
Computer thinks I'm on multiple screens.
Sail away.
I can't see the.
I could go with that. We could just
Sail away with me.
take 5 minutes and listen to sticks. So yeah, we'll go to Steve for a staff presentation on this.
I can get this to work.
Thinking.
It's like to mess up, you need a computer.
And it's back again.
Every week it.
Take me tonight.
Give me a
Wash my
second. I
confusion
apologize,
away.
everyone.
Maybe that would.
Some good old ones. Sticks. Got a couple other albums. Are they good?
Nice.
That's. Okay. Apologize, everyone, for that brief computer glitch. As mentioned, this is a public hearing to consider text changes in the zoning ordinance, more particular Chapter 13 in the mixed use code, dealing with building types and building heights. If you remember years ago when this ordinance was first written in, I think it was 2021, you guys were introduced to this, and everything was built and written for stories, not overall height. But over the time to get it approved, some things changed, and it was changed from stories to just height. The reason for this text change is more after speaking with some developers and stuff, we've found that the heights are okay, 80, 60 feet is good, and sometimes 40, but if you want a viable commercial use or, floor, it needs to be tall, 14, 18, 20 feet tall. But if you do that and your overall height is 60 feet and you say, I'm taking 20 feet of it for commercial, that really limits what you can do above. A lot of developers, if they say I can have 4 or 5 stories and I can get X number of residential units included on top of that commercial, it helps, pencil out and work. But as soon as you say, your overall height, and I want an 18-foot first floor, I'm losing a floor somewhere. So the thought was to go back to the stories. Now, it's not as tall as originally looked at. If you remember right, especially in the storefront, in the downtown east, it was 12 stories. Downtown west was 10 stories, and the gateway was 5 or 6. I can't remember exactly. So what staff did is we just said, okay, downtown east can have up to 80 feet, 8 stories, 60 feet, 6 stories, 40 feet, 4 stories. Just keep it still comparable. Yes, if you calculate it out, I have an 18-foot first floor and 10-foot 3 more floors. Yes, it's going to be taller than 40 feet, and you might be more 50, 52, 53, but in essence, you still have a 4-story building that allows for a good, viable commercial space and good residential. One thought I had is if I was developing it, especially that upper floor, if you want that to be a penthouse, you want it to be nice, why couldn't I go 10, 14-foot roof line on that to get that more, expensive look to be able to rent it or sell it out? So that's kind of where staff was coming from on these changes. So in the storefront, again, it's 8 stories, 6 stories, and 4 stories for the 3. The ground floor stories, again, I just took the verbiage of what was originally written. 14 minimum, 24 maximum. There is a caveat, though, that any floor that's 18 feet or if it's more than 18 feet, it'll count as 2. So if I say I want a 20-foot first ground floor, I'm taking 2 stories. That way it's not, 24, I'm maxing everything out. There is a limit, but they have that ability to at least get, something that can make it viable. If they really want to go bigger, they know they're losing a floor. So that's kind of what those height changes. It kind of continues on to the general stoop, very similar on the number of stories allowed. The maximum height on ground floor is 18 versus 24. Again, it's a different type of building, so we're trying to get different types of uses in those. They can pick whichever building type they want. It's not set in stone that you have to do this or you have to do that, especially on general stoop and the storefront. They're very similar, just have some tweaks to it. One's better than the other depending on what you want to do. Limited bay, in this case, it's only allowed in the downtown gateway. 4 stories, keeping the same theme. This one does have the ability to go up higher on the ground floor, but again, if you go more than 18, you're doing 2 stories for that one. The large format is the kind of the bigger change. This is more like Harmon's or Walmart, those bigger stores that come in. They're going to have a big first floor, and usually a lot of times they don't do anything bigger, but this would allow them to. This one would have a max height of the main floor of 24 feet, and it doesn't count as another story. Because if you walk into Harmon's or Walmart or any of those big stores, they've got large ceilings, so we don't want to hurt them in any way. And if they wanted to build, some office space or residential above, why not? Let them have that ability. I did eliminate the 60 and can only be 60 feet, 100 feet from Midland or Riverdale Road, 1900 West. Because again, these are different types of buildings. Now again, if you want to keep it in, we can keep it in. Just staff was looking through it as because that's a caveat in the downtown east, that if I'm going to have a big building like that, let's don't hinder it in the aspects of 60 and then 100 feet after that, 80 feet tall. And then the civic building, that would just be Roy City itself going in to build a building in there, but same 8 stories, 6 stories, 4 stories, anything larger than 18, more than 18 is counts as 2. So staff would just recommend that we forward a positive recommendation to the city council for these changes. Any
Thanks, Steve.
questions?
Any questions? Steve, while we do the public hearing, could you pull up a map of the downtown east section? I have something I'll bring up after we hear the
Knowing
public
I
hearing.
had computer problems and you're asking that, yes, we can do that.
I don't know, maybe you'll go to some Def Leppard or something for the next one.
I can't say Billy Idol now, so,
I thought maybe that was before you got your haircut.
well, we could do some Rebel Yell too, if you want.
All right, so now it's time for the public hearing. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
Motion to go into public hearing.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We're now in a public hearing. We invite members of the public to come up. When you come forward, please state your name and your address, and then we'll give each of you 3 minutes to speak. And 3 minutes sounds like a short time, but that's actually quite a bit. That's almost one full page of text that you could read. And then when you come up, we just ask you to be respectful. Obviously, address questions to the chair. We'll keep any questions. We'll write those down, and then at the very end of the public hearing, we'll go through and address those. So with that, we'll go into public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to come forward and speak?
I am Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. I was taking a look at these proposed changes, the amendments to Title 10, Section 13. Currently, the limit is 60 feet for any building. I'm really excited to see this mixed-use concept be implemented in here in Roy. So it's not like I'm opposing this. I just have some questions about why it's being changed so drastically. Currently, if you take the proposed change to the ground floor, the maximum is 18 feet before it's considered multiple floors. So if you take the maximum height of the ground floor at 18 feet, and then the maximum number of stories at 14 feet apiece, you add all those up and it comes to 116 feet tall. The current maximum on those buildings is 60. So just so that everybody's thinking about the ramifications about what this would do, we would change the maximum allowed from 60 feet to 116. I'm not necessarily concerned about that, but what I would do is suggest that you amend this proposed amendment so that there is some kind of maximum, even on the tallest size building, whatever this body feels is correct and good. So again, I'm glad that it gives so many different options to the developers to make bigger buildings here in Roy. That's probably a good thing. But just consider what's going to happen if we allow a nearly 120-foot building to be built where, somewhere in the business district. So that's the only suggestion I have. I would probably still support this change, but just so that everybody thinks about what the actual practical ramification is of changing this from 60 to a possible maximum of 116 feet. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak to this? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And do we need to do a motion for that? I can't remember. Yeah, so we'll do a motion to close public comment.
I motion to close public comment.
Motion to close, all in favor? Or second, sorry, second. We have a second from Commissioner Tanner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're now out of public comment. Any discussion from the commissioners?
Just to clarify, sorry, on the 60 feet in the downtown east, which is this orange, reddish orange, whatever you want to call it, it's actually the first 100 feet back of curb, and then after that, it can go up to 80 feet. So in some instances, you're only going up, 36 feet? So just to answer that, it doesn't sound as drastic when you go up to 80.
That's all right.
No,
Well,
I had to do it myself to see if 116 feet was good.
I
So that
did-
was the only answer to the question.
Thank you.
I did a little research of a city that's 2 down from us that's doing the same type of mixed use. Theirs is actually pretty uncomplicated, I guess. It's pretty simple. It says, 2 stories minimum, 6 stories high, and the minimum height of a story is 10 feet. And so I think in all practicality, to Mr. Horner's comments, is that I don't know that anybody's going to want to put in a 14-foot story because there's just no practical use for a 14-foot high apartment or another building. It just doesn't make sense. And so knowing that, there's other cities that are saying, hey, for practical use, do we really need to put a cap on how high it can be? because, you know, practicality is going to tell us no. And so theirs is just, okay, 2 stories minimum, 6 max, using stories instead of a height, a foot, and then saying that each story has to be a minimum of 10 foot, which the commercial would want the 10-foot minimum. That's where they put all of their HVAC and stuff. That's all up in the ceilings, versus obviously what they do for apartments. So I like the way that it's been laid out. It seems to fit, and obviously we've seen those buildings being built in those cities, and they're successful, and they're not 120 feet high. Hallelujah. And they're right on their main street. So, and they look nice.
Excellent, good points. Steve, will you just walk through, so the red, what you've got, it looks pretty red from here, maybe a little reddish, reddish orange. So that's Riverdale Road, and then what's the cutoff to the south there?
Southwise, Les Schwab is the cutoff, and then east is the freeway. So you're kind of really confined there. No residential, single family anywhere. It's all commercial. Kind of the hot pink is what I'll call it. That's the downtown west. That's east or west of 19 to 2000 west. There's a section down on 57 to 56 that goes to, 2050 west. That does have a 60-foot allowance right now. And then the lighter pink, purplish, whatever you want to call it, is the downtown gateway. So four stories there. Those last two do front more residential than the downtown east.
And where I'm kind of going with this is maybe something for the other commissioners to think, that downtown east is really on the other side of the freeway. When we sent this proposal to the council, we actually had a higher height than what they ended up adopting. It makes a lot of sense to me that maybe we make a recommendation that they can go 10 or 12 stories in that area, just to give more options to developers. If this is something that we want to see happen, then I think we need to give flexibility so that these things are economically viable, so that we can revitalize that area of town. I don't really have a lot of interest in the other areas. I know we've got, like the west area, things like that. We've got things where, within a certain distance of the property, it can only be so tall, and then staggered up, and that way somebody's not walking out of their house and, looking into a wall of a building. But on that downtown east side, I mean, we've got infrastructure, we've got the freeway, we've got grocery stores, we've got restaurants, we've got 1900, 5600 Riverdale Road, access to the freeway. We have that infrastructure in place. It makes sense to me, or it doesn't make sense, I guess, maybe to flip around my thought. It doesn't make sense to me that we've restricted that in such a way that it will limit what type of development we can get in here. So I think overall this is a great concept to go to stories versus a set height, because that allows flexibility. But in that downtown east, maybe we consider allowing up to 12 stories on that side.
Sorry, was that the dark pink?
That was kind of the reddish orange.
I'm sorry, these colors are a little.
Yeah, so if you just think of it, it's basically from Riverdale Road to Les Schwab
Okay, that
on
one,
the
okay.
on the east side of 1900. So it wouldn't affect anything on the west side or anything on either end of that. So it's just kind of that.
The real downtown.
And everything that's east of anything that will be developed is only, 6 stories of freeway.
You're not close to anything
So,
residential.
Yeah,
We're
we're away from the
basically-
residential
Yeah.
and
Talk in your
It
mics,
is.
guys.
say that again, Commissioner Felt.
You're not close to anything residential, in the east especially. I mean, the only concern you'd really even have is anybody that would want to view from west to east of the mountain, whether that would affect any kind of a view that way. That's the only concern I would even entertain doing anything with the east.
But would that need to be an entirely different part of this, or would you just add that into this?
Just
I
to
think
the
we could
east.
amend this to,
And you could make your recommendation and just say downtown east is X number of stories, just change that to whatever stories you're thinking of. And then when it gets to the city council, that's kind of what your recommendation is.
I mean, just doing some quick numbers, even if you went to 10 stories, for all practical purposes, even if you did a large main floor that would take up 2 stories, you're 100 feet. Or no more than 100 feet in most cases.
Again, depending.
But from all I mean, most of your residential stories are not gonna wanna go from any more than a 10-foot.
No. I
Story.
mean, the penthouse
Other than
maybe
maybe
is
the
only-
penthouse, so the bottom and the top floors are
Right.
the two that I can see.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, so. Like, just running some quick numbers, you're really close to 100 feet. So, and I don't have a problem with that.
But I just think it may make things a little more viable in that zone to increase that.
What kind of negative impacts would it have? I don't know if there would be any.
Because the impacts that I see, as far as traffic, those kinds of things, I mean, you've got the infrastructure and the restaurants, the grocery stores, so I don't see those people coming west where we already have a congestion problem. I think that's more commuters coming from Hill and from Salt Lake and those kinds of things. So I think it keeps, I think it would keep that growth, especially with Falcon Hill and, the jobs that are coming in there. The flexibility, I think, could make some of those more expensive units more of a viable option for a lot of people that don't necessarily want a yard, that want to be close to where they work. So I think the negatives that I can see are kind of counterbalanced by the infrastructure that's in place, and that seems like it would be a good location. If we were building this down by Kent's, I'd have a whole different outlook on it.
Yeah.
But if there are other negatives, like I'm open to hearing it.
I guess I am curious about the parking, how that plays into all of it once you, story-wise, like if they wanted to include parking in
They'd
the
have to account
building,
for
if
it.
that makes sense. Like,
Well,
would that,
right now when developers ask how tall and how many units can they get and stuff, and really your constraints are parking.
Yep.
Say you do, it gets approved at 12 stories and they get a small lot. If they can't park 8 stories, they're not getting more than that.
right,
So the constraints are parking. So I don't think the numbers need to change on the parking aspect. If I've got a 12-acre parcel and I can park 12 stories, easily, I think that's what Ryan's talking about. Why not allow it?
Right.
So parking is your constraint that will limit. If I got a small property, I'm not going to get very tall.
well, so I'm also curious, are they allowed to put parking in their building as well as
Under-
part of
yeah.
that? Okay, that's why it's just, but I mean, that also, that kind of answered both questions, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah, there can't be any residential on the main floor. Your commercial has to be so far into the building. I think it's 30, 35 feet. And say you have a 100-foot wide building, that can be parking. So you
Okay,
can
I was
have
just-
underground or under the building parking right there to maximize your ability, so.
Right, I was just curious about that because I do know in the past that was a concern. At least I remember them talking about in the council, so I just thought it would be good to maybe just think about how that works in that situation as well, so,
Good question. Hope I answered it.
yeah.
And would it make sense, maybe just piggybacking off of Mr. Homer's comment, maybe just even saying in the downtown east, you could go up to 120 feet and not even putting a limit on stories and just let that organically have, is there other cities that do things like that, or is it more standard to, I mean, I'm fine putting it at 10 or 12, but
Well, I think if you max it at a height, as I originally said, this ordinance was written under stories. So how I measure height is by stories, not by height. So, from floor to ceiling is a story, and that's how I start measuring. And it makes it a lot easier to manipulate and go through the code and read it because it's cohesive now.
gotcha.
Right.
So yeah,
I would prefer just say 10 or 12 stories because you're 100, 120 feet. If that's kind of where you're wanting, look at the math for the number of stories to allow and recommend that.
so no, for me, I'd be open to even 12 stories on that downtown east side.
East, yeah. 12 stories.
Someone make a motion.
Okay. So we can make a motion. I think everything else stays the same except for the downtown
Right. Downtown
east,
yeah.
unless anybody has an appetite.
My
To
only
do
thought
that.
would be in the large format buildings, don't say 12 stories. Because right now, we just have it as 3. Because right now,
Yeah.
3 stories could still be
true.
72 feet.
In case it gets
Yeah.
developed into a majority.
Or
yeah.
no,
I think we're
math
just talking
wrong,
about downtown
60,
east, aren't we?
50
Yeah,
something feet.
downtown east, but
But there's a possibility of that being developed in downtown east.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, Harmon's could say, hey, our
We're done.
engineers say we can add 2 more stories to this.
Yeah.
I just think large format buildings, because it is so
Large
big,
format. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to go too high.
but that's up to you.
No, I agree with that.
yeah,
yeah, I don't think any of us want to change the large format. I don't see much.
so just,
I'll go ahead and make a motion to forward a recommendation to City Council regarding the proposed amendments to Title 10 zoning regulations, amending Chapter 13 mixed-use building types, storefronts, general stoop, limited bay, large format, civils, changing building heights from overall height to number of stories within the downtown area with the amendment of 12 stories in the downtown east, excluding the large format, and large format to stay at the standard that's been suggested.
Okay, we have the motion. Stephen Patrick, does that make sense to you the way that
Yep.
motion was made? Okay. Do we have a second? Second it. We have a second. All in favor? Oh, sorry, roll call. Yep.
You just want to get home, no? Is there a
Well, you know.
Commissioner Holbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Collins,
aye.
Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Chair Cowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brand. Aye. Commissioner Bills. Aye. Commissioner Tanner.
Aye.
Yeah, that passes 7-0. It will be on next week's city council meeting.
All right, thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 4, which is the third item on our agenda, which is to consider development agreement for Sunset Builders regarding the Echelon project located at 5902 South, 1900 West, to allow the overall building height to increase to 10 feet. And this will also have a public hearing with it, but do we have the applicants here, or did you have something, Steve?
It's us.
Just you? Okay.
Yep. I'm actually to defer to Brody Flint, the Community Development Director, Assistant
Okay.
City Manager, just so you don't have to keep hearing from me all the time.
Oh, you're doing great, Steve. Yeah, thank you, Planning Commissioners. So this item essentially is on more out of caution on our part because we have the building. I know everyone is familiar with. This is the Echelon project. It started, stopped, kind of changed, was going to be sold, and now is back with kind of some of the original developers. This is a mixed-use product that is going to do commercial on the bottom floor. It's essentially the 2 houses just south of Les Schwab. And really what the developers are running into is kind of one of the many persons that I've talked to that basically is the reason we had the conversation we just had, that the height restrictions, while they sound nice, are really handcuffing what developers economically want to do to make a project that's viable for that area, but also that betters Roy City. So we asked the Planning Commission to have this development agreement considered out of an abundance of caution if somehow the ordinance before you that you just recommended approval gets tied up in some city politics. But essentially what they're doing is saying the limit's 40 feet. To make their project viable, they need to be at about 47, 48 feet. There's multiple reasons for that. One is as Commissioner Tanner mentioned, the commercial building, right? When you say 10 feet, it sounds great, but really what that does, yeah, the engineer's shaking his head no,
Yeah.
is you put some of that commercial property at 8 feet. Just with HVAC and other requirements, sprinkling systems, and it just doesn't work. So you essentially turn it into a 3-story building, and again, you lose the economic viability of the project. Specific also to this one is the way our ordinance is drafted. It makes it about, and again, this is currently, it makes it anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million more expensive to build because they don't have the height within the floors to do things. So it requires more steel and things like that. I'm not a super builder by any means, but so essentially what we're asking this commission to do is just essentially look at this development agreement. The development agreement would put it in line with the ordinance you just recommended. We need to go through the public hearing. And again, we're kind of attacking this at both ends so that hopefully the Echelon people can have a project that's viable and doesn't cost them an extra $1 million to build, which I think we all know would really hurt our chances of having this project. So with that, I'll answer any questions I can, but it's pretty straightforward considering the conversation you just had.
Well, I think the other thing to consider as we hear about affordable housing, you know, the more it costs to build the buildings, the more they're gonna have to rent those things out, so it takes the affordability out of it. And so any way we can do as a city to allow that, I think that's wise.
I think an important thing to consider too, and I don't know that we often talk about this, you know, is I get hollered at a lot by concerned persons and citizens a lot is, well, affordable, it's still really expensive. I agree with you. And you know
Absolutely.
what? And if I had been wise the second I got out of college, I would have bought my dream home and just figured out how to afford it and stayed there, and I would have been miles ahead. It's not where we're at.
Yeah.
Things are expensive,
Yep.
and anyone who thinks that things are going to get cheaper in Utah over the next 10 or 20 years is taking the ostrich approach to life. We are beyond the point where you could, you know, graduate from college and buy a house for $180,000 or $200,000. It's just not going to happen.
Yep.
So when we look at things that provide a practical solution, I think we as a city owe our residents and our future residents to look at that. You know, specific to this project, it'll produce between 30 and 40 apartments in this thing. Okay, so if you take $1 million that this costs extra, divide it by 30 apartments, I mean, what does that do to rent? And also too, I know we hear I hear personally a lot of feedback and holler about the infrastructure concerns, and parking's brought up a lot. You know, any of these buildings, regardless of their height, they have to comply with our parking, right? And they have to comply with the International Building Code. So it's not like they're building some cheap building out of bamboo, right? Like, it's still a building that satisfies all those things. What we're really talking about is allowing the property owner the flexibility to build a building that works, so. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll sit down.
Thank you.
Much better than I could have said it.
Yeah. I really appreciate both of you bringing up the affordability of housing, though, because I do think that is a really big concern in our, well, in the nation, but also in our city. So I think that's an
Communities, yeah.
important point to make.
Anything else on the staff front, Steve?
No.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, motion's in order to go into public comment.
Motion to go into public comment.
Do we have a second? Motion and a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're now in public comment. Same rules apply. Members of the public, will give you 3 minutes to come up, state your name, your address, and then give us your thoughts related to this development agreement. Any members of the public that would like to come forward?
I am still Kevin Homer, and I still live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. As I appreciate Mr. Parkinson spending a little bit of time helping me understand the reasons why this is needed. I agree with all the engineering reasons. I agree with, you know, the need for mixed use. Again, I'm excited to see this actually begin to be implemented here in Roy. I understand the math of that part of it. It costs more money to build something that's shorter and squattier. So I support all of that. One thing I'm concerned about is if the previous measure, previous resolution is presented to City Council and not passed, this current one does need to be reconsidered. But if those changes to 1013 are simply passed, this motion becomes mute and doesn't even need to be discussed because the need for a taller building just won't even exist. The revised ordinance would be allowed. What I do have concerns over is when significant time and debate has happened on the zoning ordinances here, I really have concerns when we start punching holes and making exceptions to all those zoning ordinances. This one will not need to be redone if Title 1013 is passed. What I would suggest is, rather than trying to continually make exceptions to the zoning ordinances that already exist, I would suggest that this one be tabled Next week in city council, if they pass the first ordinance, the second ordinance change or the exception will not need to be made. It will just automatically sail through. If the first amendment does not pass, then I think an extended time for discussion about this one on the Echelon project should happen. It will only set them back 1 or 2 weeks. Then we can have a proper discussion about why make an exception to this ordinance. So that's what I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that would like to come up?
Kevin's a little taller than I am. Hey, Jeremy Thompson, 5879 South, 3850 West. Appreciate all the work you guys are doing. I just had a thought, and maybe this is better for city council, so I'll strive to be there next week, but I wanted to put it forward. One of the things that was brought up is like, hey, if I could have bought my dream house out of college, that would have been the smart thing to do. I know we're looking at putting a lot of rental units through the city, and that's necessary. People need places to live. I was wondering if there was any appetite, and again, I don't know if this is the right forum, but I'll bring it up again at city council if I can make it, of like condos or people, living spaces where people can invest and develop equity so that when they eventually move out, maybe into a full home, in a kind of a temporary renting space. So I don't know if this is the right forum for it. I'll bring it up again, but I just want to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Henry DiVerona. I'm with the Echelon Project. And my question is to Steve, to you all. In our development agreement that's been approved, will it go into automatic change if you guys next week change number 3? Or am I stuck with the development agreement that I already have?
I'll answer after.
Okay. That's all my question was. I wanted to make sure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your attention, and God bless.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that would like to come up? Okay, a motion's in order to,
Motion to go out of public hearing.
motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second, all in favor? Aye. All right, we are now out of public, or any opposed? We're now out of public comment. Any discussion here?
I don't know that I understood that the Echelon project was gonna be rentals. I thought they're gonna be condos, that they are gonna be ones that people can invest in. That's what I'd understood, so.
So, and this is a good point, and not talking bad to anyone, because it is a fair question. And I have this conversation, I've had it multiple times with every elected official in the city. The hard thing about this conversation is a fair question. The difficulty becomes is if an elected body uses that to approve or deny, it becomes a lawsuit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You can't discriminate whether Mr. DeVerona and his partners want to do a rental product or a for sale product. So is it a question that we want to know the answer to? No. Absolutely. Do the neighbors want to know? Because there are certain community sentiments between rentals and owners, and people want to know that. However, it is not an appropriate factor to make your decision in. And I wish there was a better answer. There's just not, because there's, not a whole lot of things that the elected officials can do to get themselves sued, and that's one of them.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and interesting enough, anybody that invests in one of those can turn it into a rental. I mean, there's so many ways that can happen.
Yeah.
It can be both ways or one way or the other, so.
And right, like a builder, I say this all the time, a builder can start a project here, the market demands this, they change it, and after a year, they sell the project and the new owner wants to sell the whole thing. There's a million things that happen in the market that change
Yep,
that.
absolutely.
Which is also another reason that it's kind of one of those factors that we really shouldn't be making our zoning and land use decisions based on that. Because if I come into the project that's for sale and Steve comes in with a similar project in a similar area that's for rent and you approve me and not Steve, guess what Steve gets to do? And he gets to pay a stupid lawyer a bunch of money to get a bunch of money from the city.
Right.
Well, and it seems like a diversity of housing is good for a city anyway, like just economically and, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's even like studies on that and stuff I've seen that it's a good to have the diversity
And
anyway.
you kind of see that shift where, you know, different generations have different ideas of housing. Some don't want to mow a lawn, some don't want to shovel sidewalks. So this is ideal for them. And then some of them like to be close to the freeway for, you know, access to their and that's, we can't restrict it based on, you know, traditional housing. Traditional housing's out the door at this point. So,
Could I answer Henry's question?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by development agreement. They were, last month, they got approval to build it subject to the conditions with, you know, the DRC comments.
Right.
So that is approved, can be built 40 feet tall, 4 stories as it was approved. So this will just, if the text change doesn't happen and the development agreement's approved, then you can raise it to 50 feet. If the text change is approved, as Mr. Homer had mentioned, we don't need the development agreement, but as Brody Flynn had mentioned, that we're kind of being cautious to have them both. So either one gets approved, the Echelon project can do what they need to do in order to make their project viable. So
That's the purpose of the development agreement.
Yeah.
So,
in case one gets bogged down, the other one can go through. And staff would really like just the text change to go, Mr. Homer's, you know, we're not just making exceptions here and exceptions there. It's just all by code. Makes my job a much easier. I don't have to go find the development agreement and read legalese and ask Patrick to decipher it for me so I can decide.
Well,
No
we
offense,
kind of did a similar thing with the chickens, right? That we
What was
didn't
that?
wanna- We kind of did a similar thing with the chickens, like we didn't want to just do one little section and this and that, but it changed like the ordinance instead of
Yeah.
just one little
Yep.
part, you know.
Had to bring up the chickens again.
Everyone loves the chickens, right? Well, the people that love their chickens love their chickens.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, a motion is in order.
I make a motion that we recommend to the council, we approve to consider a development agreement with Sunset Builders regarding the Echelon project located at 5902 South, 1900 West, to allow the overall building height to increase to 10 feet.
Motion to approve the development agreement. Do we have a second? Second. Roll call.
Was that Tanner?
Yeah, that was Tanner.
That would be.
You guys are so quiet, I can't hear you. Commissioner Tanner,
Aye.
Commissioner Bills,
Aye.
Commissioner Brand,
Aye.
Chair Cowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Commissioner Collins,
Aye.
Commissioner Holbert.
I
Okay, that passes unanimously.
And it will also be on next week's city council meeting.
All right, the next item on our agenda is to consider a request for the site plan and architectural approval for Midland Square Commercial Phase 3, located at approximately 4060 South, 2850 West. And is the applicant here? You could give us your name and address and then tell us about your project here.
Clay Jensen, representing Heritage Land Development, 2650 Washington Boulevard in Ogden, Utah. As stated, my purpose in being here tonight is to seek approval for a site plan and architectural approval for Midtown Square Phase 3, which falls in the urban corridor and is a 30 townhome development proposal. You can see the location there, and a preliminary layout of the buildings, the 30 buildings there. The north being on the right-hand side and the south being on the left-hand side. Let's go to the
Waiting for you now.
the materials and the coloring, which I would have brought printouts and so forth, but again, this is Phase 3, so this is already built, so some of you have probably seen it, and we have a few photos as well to follow. If you go to the next one, which was one that I didn't obtain, and it seemed a little bit fuzzy and sundown, so I went and did extra credit homework yesterday, I guess, and went and put my own photo skills to the test and just took some shots of the different buildings and struggled to find places where there wasn't cars parked, but I needed to give you your best view at that. So this is again, a phase 3. The first 2 phases are already done. And when the urban corridor came into effect in October, it made this parcel available for the application, and we worked with the owner of the development to see if we could get the band back together and go for phase 3. So that's my purpose here tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
The question, do you own the parcel that's south of this?
No,
Okay,
nope.
too bad.
In fact, I was gonna say, in fact, we didn't even own this one, somebody else did, but they approached us, our sister company is the builder of the project, of the first 2 phases, and they approached us knowing that we had built the first 2 phases, or that our sister company had, and asked if we had interest in it, so that's kind of how we stumbled into it, but no, we didn't own this, we do now, and we don't own anything to the south of it.
Example, okay,
You talking about the vacant parcel south of it?
yeah.
Okay.
Would you like us to?
I'd maybe suggest it. It's just a weed patch down there. I drive by it every day, and it's a weed patch, and it'd be nice to get it cleaned up so it's not a threat to the residents down there.
Sure.
So,
Okay, any other questions on the project? Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time.
that was a little off project, so I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. In fact, Steve, if you want to have a conversation about DA agreements and attainable housing or affordable housing, we've had several conversations with Steve Waldrop in his office and have some ideas on making sure that the buyers, for example, are the ones that are going to be in the homes for the first 5 to 10 years and putting stipulations that they're owner occupied and stuff. But we've had several conversations, and if you want to sit down and chew the fat on that one day, we can certainly do that too.
The great thing is we had Steve here in a work session
Well,
for
even better then.
almost 2 hours, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have several developments that are going that have DA agreements that will include owner occupied and certain stipulations. And so when you get to work with a developer that wants to come in and maybe seek something that's outside of your zoning and do a development agreement, you can place certain agreements in place, and that does help keep the price down and kind of accomplish some of the goals that the state's looking for. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Steve, any other
Now
comments
that
on
he's
this?
stolen all my pictures and my thunder. This is, again, just kind of clarify location is 4060 South, 2850 West there in Midland and 4000. Kind of an aerial view. You'll notice the same aerial. I'm gonna have to get Clay later. He stole my picture.
They brought my own, but you had the north on yours, so
Oh.
I did use yours.
You just cut it.
You can find a better idea.
Site plan wise, again, it's 30 units. The great thing about this particular zone, if you remember right, is anything 120 feet or 25 feet back of curb from a public road has the ability to be 100% residential. When we were looking at that ordinance, mostly on 3500 West, there are some deep lots that we were looking at that would have commercial up front and residential in back. But there were a few just kind of here and there that meet the distance that don't need commercial. So this was one of those parcels that I know that the previous landowner has been trying and trying and trying to find development to come in, and no one's wanting to. They always ask, can I do residential? Can I do residential? And so when the code changed not too long ago, that opened up this parcel, and there's kind of a few others like it that developers now looking for those opportunities. So I think it's a win-win, especially knowing that the similar project was built to the east of this. So it won't look out of place. It won't look anything different. The colors might be a little different, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with different colors. I think this picture is actually well taken.
Did you take it?
But staff would recommend approving both site plan and the architectural as with the conditions as mentioned in the staff report.
Thanks, Steve. Any discussion or?
So I do have a question after thinking about this a little bit. I'm just wondering, since we are adding that in, will there be, and I don't know if this is a city thing or the developers, but like for stop signs and things, because it is, I drive through there all the time because, well, I'll just say, my son loves McDonald's, so we just go that way. Anyway, and so I'm just wondering, like, what would happen with that, I guess, like.
Well, the good and the bad is these are private roads, so the city doesn't really have jurisdiction over putting stop signs. It's definitely one that you could say, hey, developer, look at those, make it yield or stop or what have you. So, I mean, those are good comments. He can always take that into advice and do it. I think it's always good to have, those type of signals just to help with traffic and especially knowing, you got commercial there and residential mix, so.
Right, and I guess just my suggestion as a commissioner then is to maybe study how the traffic goes right there. I just know like the main traffic comes by Arby's, which doesn't really interfere that much, and with McDonald's, just because the lines, but so maybe just like some safety precautions there, because I know there are a lot of little kids in that neighborhood over there, and this will be a lot closer, because right now it kind of divides the neighborhood from the shops and stuff. So just thinking about those safety precautions, I guess, would be, and because the roads are fairly narrow as well, we don't want to, we want as much safety there as possible, I guess, so.
So the one concern, having driven that road quite a bit, but not to McDonald's, I'm sorry, is I don't go to McDonald's. The road that's between the commercial and this development, I don't see the name of it.
It's a private road.
That's a
I
private
don't
road
think it
that
has
goes
a name right
behind.
at the moment.
Okay, okay, so we don't
I
have any
can
control of that
definitely
one.
give it a name.
No. I don't know.
Tanner Way.
No. I just know that because of all of the commercial property that's butted up against Midland and the lack of parking in some of those commercials, there's employees park on that road. And if we now put in this development, and we all know that people own more stuff they need to park than they have places to park it, and if we're putting stuff on both sides of that road, on that private road, that's gonna create a mess. And
Well,
that's- I wanted us to paint it before, but because we don't own it, we
In the
can't.
DRC comments, it does talk, the fire department does say put permanent no parking signs,
perfect.
so.
On both sides?
I would assume so, because they need 26 feet, and these roads are, again, private, so they're as
Yeah.
narrow as they can
Okay.
get away with, which is 26 feet, so.
Okay.
I can talk with the developer that did the commercial for that main road in between.
Right,
But I know within this development, it has those same aspects.
perfect.
Yeah, there is a lot of people that just park kind of wherever over there right now.
I mean,
so-
right now, there's
Yeah.
nothing else there,
Right,
so.
exactly. So-
And I think when I read that was for the 2850. I didn't think it was for that one, so my apologies.
No, you're fine.
Nope. Okay,
Okay, a couple of motions are in order unless there's further discussion.
Can I try this one? Or-
Absolutely.
I might mess it up, but, okay, so I motion to approve the request for a site plan. Do I do the architecture and site plan separate? Separate.
Yes.
Okay, site plan, for the Midland Square Commercial Phase 3, located approximately 4060 South and 2850 West, with, is it the DRC or?
You can just say
With the.
With
the
conditions
conditions
outlined.
mentioned in the staff report.
Okay, okay. With the conditions mentioned in the staff report.
Right, and that was the site plan.
site
correct?
plan.
Yep.
So we have a motion to approve the site plan.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Do you want to take a crack at the
Yep,
second
I'm
one
gonna
too?
try the
Okay.
second one, see if I do it better, yeah. Okay, I motion to approve the architectural approval for Midland Square Commercial Phase 3, located approximately 4060 South, 2850 West, with the conditions in the staff report, yeah. Or outlined in the staff report, yeah, that's a better way of saying it.
Okay, so we have a motion for the architectural.
Second,
approval. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously as well. So thank you, and thank you for your project. It's kind of fun to see some of the changes we've made over the years get built out. So, yeah, we think that's always a good thing. So with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is our commissioner's minute. I don't have anything. Do any of the other commissioners have anything to bring up?
I just wanted to say, since I blabble out, so, but because we are talking about this housing project, I do want to say that I know a lot of people before the first one went in were like, oh, townhomes, blah, blah, blah. But these people are right next to my neighborhood, and they're part of our schools now and all these different things. And they've actually added a lot of value, I feel like, to our community. So I just wanted to say that I actually really appreciate these projects that come in. Like, sometimes we get upset about things that may or may not happen, and I think that the people that have moved in there into Roy have been really great parts of our community, so.
Excellent point. Thank you. Anything else?
Janelle's so great.
I know.
Well, these people personally impact my neighborhood, so
I know,
I'm
you're
like,
just
but they're
great.
actually pretty great, yeah.
Yeah, so are you. She's great. That's my comment.
How can you top that? No, and I, kind of, the discussion that was, or the point that was brought up with ownership versus rentals, things like that. I know one of the reasons I got involved is trying to create some of those opportunities, because ownership really is kind of, one of the things that sets our country apart. And if we can foster or build opportunities for people to get ownership, that's really, I think, a critical component. Now, we can't always regulate down to how that actually plays out, but creating those opportunities, and that's something that, going forward, I think we just need to keep in mind, is creating those opportunities for that to occur. And I think we've done pretty good on that as a planning commission, so. All right.
Agreed.
Did you have something, Commissioner Tanner? You look like you're itching to.
No, I
Use
was
that
going
microphone.
to say, I agree. My phone, jeez. Put it clear up here, it's really, no, it's just really loud. It's picking me up. Maybe I'm just talking louder ever since Steve, he's messing with my microphone. I know he is.
He's fixing it. Now talk.
Hello, better? We're in a country of opportunities, and when we look at these buildings being built and the opportunities to own, and some own to rent, that's all part of the American dream, is, building a portfolio, having that ability to invest in yourself and your future and stuff. And so, what we're doing is basically just, allowing people to do that. This American dream is to invest and, make sure we have something to retire on and not, have to rely on what possibly is not going to be in the future. So I love the idea that obviously we want to follow the law so that we don't get sued, but it's just a land of opportunity. This is part of that opportunity. So.
Right. Okay, Steve, staff update.
Not a lot.
Got nothing?
Got nothing.
Got nothing. We'll have a work session at the end of the month. I have asked the fire department to come again, so hopefully nothing comes into play where he can't show up again. And then, continue on with that discussion. Okay. Or those discussions.
Oh, boy.
What's that?
Me and Mr. Felt were the slackers. Weren't you sick?
I've been sick.
Oh, I thought you guys were sick.
last one.
Oh, I guess I'm just a slacker.
Got to own that one.
Then the minutes. There you go. Sam's a slacker.
Sounds good. So we'll plan on the work session in 2 weeks, and thanks for making arrangements with the fire department. With that, our final motion of the night is in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I
Motion to
second.
adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Hey,
Any opposed?
well, you made the motion. You better not appeal.
He can still oppose it. There's nothing that
Oppose
prevents
your
him from
own-
opposing it, so. All right, we are now adjourned.